It was a Thursday evening when I found myself staring at the ceiling of my apartment, counting the tiny cracks that had formed over the years. You know those nights when you're not exactly sad, but there's this hollow feeling in your chest that seems impossible to fill? That was me. I'd been living in this bustling neighborhood for almost 2 years, surrounded by thousands of people, yet somehow feeling completely alone. The irony wasn't lost on me, being lonely in a city of millions. It's like being thirsty in the middle of an ocean. All that water, but not a drop to drink. My apartment wasn't anything special, just a one-bedroom with furniture that told the story of a 30-something who hadn't quite figured out adulthood yet. Mismatched IKEA pieces, a couch I'd rescued from a sidewalk sale, and plants that were perpetually on the brink of death despite my best efforts. But it was home, and on nights like these, it felt both like a sanctuary and a prison. I should probably tell you a bit about myself. I work in graphic design, mostly freelance these days after leaving a soul-crushing agency job last year. The freedom is nice, but the isolation can be overwhelming. When you work from home, days can blur together, and human interaction becomes limited to grocery store cashiers and the occasional video call with clients. It's not that I don't have friends. I do, but everyone seems caught up in their own lives, their own relationships, their own dramas. And somehow, I'd fallen through the cracks. My stomach growled, interrupting my existential spiral. I realized I hadn't eaten since that sad desk lunch of leftover pasta around noon. The fridge offered little inspiration, some wilted spinach, half a block of cheese with suspicious spots, and various condiments that had outlived their usefulness. Cooking seemed like an insurmountable task, and the thought of putting together even a simple meal made me want to crawl back into bed. This is when pizza becomes not just food, but a lifeline. Let me explain why pizza holds such a special place in my heart. It's not just about the perfect combination of cheese, sauce, and dough, though that's certainly part of it. Pizza represents comfort, simplicity, and a small indulgence that feels justified even on the worst days. It's the food equivalent of a warm hug, a reminder that sometimes the simplest pleasures can momentarily fill those empty spaces inside us. Plus, it requires minimal human interaction. Just a few clicks on an app, and food appears at your door. For an introvert having a particularly people-averse day, it's practically magic. I reached for my phone and opened my go-to-delivery app. There was a new place I hadn't tried before, Slice of Heaven, with surprisingly good reviews and a promotion for first-time orders. Their menu boasted hand-tossed crusts and locally sourced ingredients, which seemed a step above the usual chain options. I scrolled through the specialty pizzas, landing on the Mediterranean, olive oil base, spinach, feta, Kalamata olives, and roasted red peppers. My stomach growled in approval. After adding garlic knots to my cart, because who can resist, I placed my order. The app estimated delivery in 45 minutes, which seemed reasonable for a Thursday night. I set my phone down and tried to focus on the documentary I'd been half-watching, something about deep-sea creatures that seemed alien in their bioluminescent beauty. But my mind kept wandering, thoughts drifting between work deadlines, unanswered texts from my mother, and that persistent loneliness that had become my unwelcome roommate. 40 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text notification. I expected the standard automated message, "Your driver is approaching," or something equally impersonal. Instead, it was simply 2 words, "outside." No greeting, no delivery service branding, just outside. The number wasn't saved in my contacts, which wasn't unusual for delivery services that masked drivers' actual numbers. Still, there was something oddly intimate about the brevity of it, like a friend texting that they've arrived to pick you up. I grabbed my wallet and headed to the door, mentally calculating the tip as I walked. The building's security system was perpetually broken, so delivery people could come right up to the apartment doors, something that alternately concerned and relieved me, depending on my mood and how hungry I was. I opened the door, prepared for the usual transaction, the awkward smile, the exchange of food for money, the mumbled "thank you" and "enjoy" before the door closes again. But what stood before me wasn't what I expected. The pizza guy, if you could call him that, looked nothing like the usual delivery drivers who came to my door. He was tall, probably 6 feet, with dark curly hair that fell just above his eyes in a way that seemed both careless and deliberate. His eyes were a warm brown, crinkled at the corners from what I imagined was frequent laughter. He wore a faded blue t-shirt with the pizzeria's logo, but it looked like it belonged on him, not like a uniform, but an extension of his personality. And he was smiling, not the practiced customer service smile I was accustomed to, but something genuine that reached his eyes and made something flutter in my chest. "Mediterranean with garlic knots?" he asked, his voice deeper than I anticipated, with a slight accent I couldn't quite place. Maybe Italian? Greek? It added to his charm, making him seem like he'd stepped out of a rom-com rather than a delivery car. "That's me," I replied, suddenly aware that I was wearing sweatpants with a hole in the knee and a faded university t-shirt. I hadn't bothered to look in a mirror since my morning video call, and I was certain my hair was doing that thing where it defies gravity in all the wrong places. He handed me the pizza box, and our fingers brushed briefly. It was such a small contact, but after weeks of minimal human touch, it felt electric. I fumbled with my wallet, dropping a few bills before managing to extract the right amount plus tip. "Sorry," I mumbled, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. "It's been a long day." "No worries," he said, still smiling. Then, instead of taking the money and leaving, he added, "Those long days are when pizza tastes the best, you know? Like medicine for the soul." It was such an unexpected thing to say, philosophical for a pizza delivery, and somehow exactly what I needed to hear. I found myself smiling back, a real smile that felt foreign on my face after days of forced expressions for work calls and cashiers. "Would you like to come in?" The words left my mouth before I could analyze them, surprising both of us. I immediately backpedaled. "I mean, if you have time. For a slice? As thanks for the delivery? But you're probably busy with other deliveries, so don't worry about it. It was just—" "I'd love to," he interrupted my rambling. "This is actually my last delivery of the night. The owner is my uncle, so he lets me pick my hours." He paused, suddenly looking uncertain. "Unless you were just being polite? I don't want to impose." There was a moment where I could have taken the out he offered. Said yes, I was just being polite, taken my pizza, and closed the door on this unexpected interaction. The safer choice, certainly. But something about his genuine expression, or maybe just the crushing weight of another evening alone, made me shake my head. "No, I meant it. Come in. I can't eat this whole pizza anyway." Another lie. I absolutely could and often did eat an entire pizza by myself, but it seemed like a reasonable excuse. He stepped inside, and I suddenly saw my apartment through a stranger's eyes, the clutter on the coffee table, the unwashed mug in the sink, the general lived-in messiness that I'd stopped noticing. But if he judged my living space, he didn't show it. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested, glancing at the art prints on my walls, mostly vintage travel posters for places I'd never been, and the overflowing bookshelf in the corner. "I'm Marco, by the way," he said, extending his hand. "Alex," I replied, taking it. His hand was warm, slightly calloused, and he held mine for just a beat longer than necessary for a standard handshake. We moved to the kitchen, where I grabbed plates and napkins, trying to remember the last time I'd had an unexpected guest. Probably my friend Jess, who had stopped by after a bad breakup 3 months ago, cried on my couch, and left with half my ice cream supply. This felt different, charged with a potential I wasn't sure how to navigate. I opened the pizza box, and the aroma of herbs, cheese, and freshly baked dough filled the small space between us. Marco looked at the pizza with undisguised pride. "This one's my favorite," he said, accepting the plate I handed him. "I suggested it to my uncle last year after a trip to Santorini. The feta we use comes from this small local dairy. You can taste the difference." As we sat at my small kitchen table, an unexpected ease settled between us. Marco told me about his uncle's pizzeria, how it started as a tiny counter-service place and grew into a neighborhood favorite. He'd been working there since moving to the city 4 years ago, first as a dishwasher, then learning to make dough, and now handling everything from cooking to deliveries. "But pizza isn't my true passion," he confessed, finishing his first slice. "I'm actually trained as a pastry chef. Desserts are my specialty." "Really?" I asked, genuinely interested. "Why deliver pizzas then?" "Family obligation, partly. My uncle helped me immigrate, sponsored my visa, and the restaurant industry is tough. The hours, the competition. But mainly, I'm saving to open my own place someday. A cafe with specialty desserts." His eyes lit up as he described his dream, and I found myself captivated not just by the words, but by the passion behind them. The conversation flowed naturally, Jumping from food to travel, he'd been to many of the places in my posters. To our favorite books, we shared a love for magical realism. To the documentary I'd been watching, he was fascinated by ocean life and had almost studied marine biology. It was the kind of conversation that reminds you what human connection actually feels like. Not the surface-level small talk of daily interactions, but a genuine exchange of ideas and experiences. An hour passed, then two. The pizza was long gone, the garlic knots just a memory. I couldn't remember the last time I'd talked this much or laughed so freely. There was something about Marco that made me feel both energized and at ease, a combination I hadn't experienced with someone new in years. "I almost forgot," he said suddenly, reaching for the delivery bag he'd set aside when entering. "I brought something else." From the bag, he produced a small white box tied with simple twine. "It's a new recipe I've been working on. Lemon ricotta cookies with lavender glaze. I was hoping to get feedback from someone with an unbiased palate." The gesture was so unexpected, so thoughtful, that I felt a lump form in my throat. He'd brought these before even knowing he'd be invited in, just on the chance that they might brighten a stranger's evening. "That's incredibly kind," I managed, taking the box from him. Our fingers brushed again, and this time, neither of us pulled away quickly. There was a moment. One of those suspended instances where time seems to slow and possibilities hang in the air like dust motes in sunlight. I opened the box to find 6 perfectly formed cookies, each topped with a delicate lavender glaze that had been applied with obvious care. The scent was intoxicating, bright lemon and floral notes that made my mouth water despite being full from pizza. "These look professional," I said, selecting one and taking a bite. The flavor was even better than the appearance. Tart lemon balanced by the creamy richness of ricotta, with the lavender adding an unexpected but perfect floral note at the finish. "Oh my God, Marco. These are incredible." His face lit up with genuine pleasure at the compliment. "You really think so? The lavender isn't too much?" I was worried it might taste soapy. "Not at all. It's subtle, just enough to make you wonder what that mysterious note is." These could sell for $5 each at an upscale bakery. We shared the cookies, discussing the nuances of the recipe, how he'd adjusted the ratios several times to get the texture just right. As we talked, I noticed he had a small smudge of glaze at the corner of his mouth. Without thinking, I reached out and wiped it away with my thumb. The touch silenced both of us. My hand lingered near his face, and his eyes met mine with an intensity that made my heart race. Slowly, deliberately, he took my hand in his and pressed a soft kiss to my palm. It was such a simple gesture, but so intimate that it took my breath away. "I've been wanting to do that since you opened the door," he admitted, his voice lower than before. "Is that okay?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. And then he was leaning in, and I was meeting him halfway, and we were kissing, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. He tasted like lemon and lavender, and his hand came up to cup my face with a gentleness that made my chest ache. When we pulled apart, I felt dizzy, as if the ground had shifted beneath me. This wasn't how my evening was supposed to go. Pizza delivery guys don't step into your life and turn it upside down with conversation and homemade cookies and kisses that taste like dessert. That happens in movies, not in real life, not in my life. "I should probably confess something," Marco said, his thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand. "I've delivered to this building before, to other apartments. I've seen you in the lobby a few times, coming and going. I always hoped I'd get your address on a delivery someday." He looked slightly embarrassed by the admission. "Is that creepy?" "It sounds creepy when I say it out loud." I laughed, surprising myself. "No, not creepy. Flattering, actually. Though I'm not sure what you saw in the disheveled person grabbing their mail in pajamas at 2 in the afternoon. I saw someone with kind eyes who always thanked the doorman by name. Someone who once helped an elderly neighbor with her groceries. Someone who looked like they had stories to tell." He shrugged. "I'm a sucker for stories." We talked more, about deeper things now. Past relationships that had left scars, the struggle of finding connection in a city that never slows down, the particular challenges of being gay in families with traditional expectations. Marco told me about coming out to his Italian Catholic family at 19, the 2 years of strained silence that followed, and the gradual rebuilding of relationships. I shared my own coming out story, less dramatic but with its own complications, and the dating disasters that had led to my current state of self-imposed romantic exile. It was nearly midnight when Marco reluctantly said he needed to go. He had early prep at the pizzeria the next morning, dough to make before the sun rose. We stood at my door, neither quite ready to end the evening. "Can I see you again?" he asked, a vulnerability in his voice that matched the feeling in my chest. "Properly, I mean. Not as your delivery guy." "I'd like that," I said, and meant it more than I'd expected to. He leaned in for one more kiss, this one a promise rather than a question. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him, leaving me in an apartment that somehow felt different than it had hours before, warmer, full of possibility. I leaned against the door, trying to process what had just happened. A pizza delivery had turned into the most meaningful connection I'd felt in years. A text that simply said, "outside," had brought someone who made me feel seen, heard, and wanted. It was the plot of a rom-com, the kind of story I'd roll my eyes at if a friend told me it happened to them. As I cleaned up the pizza box and plates, I found myself smiling at nothing in particular. My phone buzzed with a new text, "Home safe. Thanks for making my last delivery the best one. Sweet dreams, Alex." I typed back, "Thanks for delivering yourself along with the pizza. And for the dessert kisses." That night, I fell asleep easier than I had in months, the lingering taste of lemon and lavender on my lips, and the warmth of unexpected connection in my heart. Sometimes the things we need most come in the most ordinary packages, like a pizza box on a lonely Thursday night, delivered by someone who sees the stories we have to tell. The next morning, I woke to sunshine streaming through blinds I'd forgotten to close, and another text from Marco, a photo of fresh dough rising in industrial-sized bowls, with the caption, "Thinking of you while my hands are covered in flour." I saved his number in my contacts, no longer just pizza guy, but Marco, with all his complexity and warmth. Later that day, I ordered from Slice of Heaven again, not because I needed pizza, but because I wanted to support the place that had brought him to my door. In the delivery instructions, I wrote, "Please tell Marco that Alex says hello." He didn't deliver my pizza that day. It was a cheerful college student named Tina, but there was an extra small white box included with my order. Inside were 2 heart-shaped cookies with a note that read, "Second date tomorrow? I'll cook dinner if you provide the company." And just like that, a simple delivery had changed everything. The city didn't feel quite so lonely anymore, my apartment not quite so empty. All because a pizza guy had texted outside and delivered himself, along with dessert kisses that tasted of new beginnings. Total _char_count, 18,634.